Today, we are going to find out what the most underrated class is in Critical Strike Roblox. Let's get right into it. Hello, and welcome. Before we get started with today's video, I would just like to quickly tell you that I am hella sick right now, but I really want to release some content, so hopefully my voice isn't too weird. Also, I apologize for not uploading for quite a while. I thought that CS was going to get updated, so I paused all of my content so that I wouldn't have to remake it, and now I find out that the devs have basically quit. But anyways, let's get into today's video talking about the 5 most underrated classes in Critical Strike. For this video, we'll actually start with the worst class on this list at number 5, and end with the best class on this list at the number 1 position. Also, to keep things as simple and concise as possible, let's assume that by underrated class, we mean that the class is 1, not used very often, and 2, that the class is actually pretty good. Because, think about it, if we're doing underrated classes and we started off with something like Musketeer, which is a terrible class, then it wouldn't actually be underrated, just bad. And, of course, we need to know what the most 5 underrated classes are, so let's hear it. Scout, Sorcerer, Paladin, Mercenary, and Fairy. And with that bit of clarification, let's take a look at the first class on our list in the number 5 position, the Scout. Now, if the Scout wasn't so hard to use, then it would definitely be higher up on this list. So, before we discuss why it's hard to use, let's actually go over some of the good things when it comes to the Scout. So, for starters, it does hella damage. That's right, hella damage. This is because the Scout not only has fairly low cooldowns, but it also has a freaking shotgun, several high damage projectiles, and it even has the ability to bullet spam, aka bullet hell. One other thing that makes the Scout such a surprisingly good class is the fact that it is able to air stall, or jump up in the air for a moment to dodge attacks, break an opponent's combo, and or get a bit of precious time to refresh some moves. Of course, all this damage and bullet hell must be balanced out, and with the Scout, that's balanced by smaller projectiles and basically zero movement outside of the traditional directional and jump movement provided by your keyboard, or if you're a filthy mobile player, by the D-pad and the jump button. Of course, that's not the only way the Scout has been balanced. The shotgun projectiles don't travel very far, and if you don't hit enough projectiles overall on your opponent, it is very likely that you will lose the battle. But overall, the Scout is a pretty good class. I definitely don't recommend it if you're looking for a class that is very overpowered with very little effort, since the amount of aiming required here is quite substantial. But moving on from the Scout, let's take a look at the next class on our list, the Sorcerer. Now, I have a very unique relationship with this class, as I have already made an entire montage dedicated to this cube-based class. Of course, in a montage, you can't really explain the class very well, so it's a good thing that we're finally covering it here. So, the Sorcerer is pretty similar to the Scout in terms of high damage that is only unlocked when you aim, air quotes there, because the Sorcerer, you aren't actually aiming anything, you're just trying to catch your opponent at the exact right distance towards you, while, at the same time, trying to keep them away at the right amount of distance. Additionally, if you don't carefully balance your moves with the Sorcerer, you'll have an extremely difficult time doing damage. One of the best things about the Sorcerer is that it's actually able to do a lot of continuous damage. All you've got to do is slow down your opponent and slam cubes right on their head. In fact, if you get your moves timed just right, you'll even be able to do over 70 massive damage to your opponent. Wow. Weird noises aside, the Sorcerer is pretty good. Unfortunately, it does have a few humongous drawbacks. For starters, the aiming system is downright terrible. Not only does a Sorcerer user have to deal with the delay of the projectile being fired, but you've also got to deal with what I like to call the aim rhombus. It's that diamond-shaped thing on the floor when Sorcerer walks to tell you where your cubes will land. So yeah, that's annoying. Luckily, the Sorcerer does make up for its paltry aiming by having very large area of effect and a stun ability. So now, let's take a look at a class that is incredibly useful and very, very powerful, introducing the Paladin. Okay, so, the Paladin. This is one of those classes that is just overall really, really good. Paladin can stun. Paladin can do a lot of damage. Paladin can do a lot of damage to multiple people. Paladin can do a lot of damage to people in the sky, etc., etc. Of course, the Paladin is much more than decent damage. It's also the only tank class that can heal itself, heal allies, and cancel debuffs on itself. But, just like with Scout, the Paladin's overall moveset and damage are heavily balanced with slow walk speed and very little in terms of burst and movement. Additionally, the Paladin is very, very broken. And I don't mean this as in it's insanely good and powerful, I mean this in the fact that Paladin is actually broken. See, if you get stunned, disabled, or hit with any move that will cause you to stop doing Paladin's Q, then the Paladin isn't able to use any more of its moves. Pretty weird, I know, and it's even worse because this bug will never get fixed since the developers all quit. But overall, the Paladin is an excellent class. If you time your Q move right and avoid getting your entire moveset broken, and you're able to deal a steady stream of damage, the Paladin easily becomes one of the better classes in Critical Strike. And here we are, with just 2 classes left on this entire list. Technically, these are the number 2 and number 1 classes, but they're both insanely excellent, so I'm going to give them both a tie for first place as the most underrated class in Critical Strike. Oh, right. What are the 2 classes? The Fairy and the Mercenary. So let's start with Mercenary. I'm sure that most of you have encountered at least a couple of pro mercenary players, but just in case you haven't, let me quickly explain just how incredibly overpowered this underused class really is. Starting with the most damning move that I've seen on basically any class, the E move. It's called Gas Canister, and when I tell you that something is freaking annoying, I move that this move is hella annoying. Not only does it do 10 or 15 damage based on whether or not it's a direct hit, it also disables you for 2 seconds in an entire cloud area. So, as long as this move is aimed properly, it can disable people from practically anywhere. And on the topic of area damage, Mercenary's Q move dashes forward and then sleeves its knife in a 360 degree radius. Also, it does 15 damage and gives the injured status effect, which means that your opponent cannot heal while they have this effect. So, if you were to combine Mercenary's E with the Q, you would have an overpowered 30 damage done to an opponent. But guess what? You can do even more damage by pressing F and getting a morale boost. Doing the morale boost along with E and Q will warrant a massive 35 to 40 damage, depending on where your gas canister hits and whether or not you do the morale boost before or after disabling your opponent. I'm honestly getting a bit flustered just talking about such a ridiculously annoying and overpowered class, so let's move on to the final class on our list, the Fairy. In my opinion, the Fairy is not only an incredibly underrated class, it's actually overpowered. Not only can it lifesteal 10 health from an opponent, but Fairy has insane burst damage capability. Take this combo for example, Q plus E plus LMB. This will do between 26 and 28 damage in literally 1 second. And, actually, that's kind of the whole thing with Fairy. Do a lot of damage really quickly, run away a little bit, damage with LMB, and then repeat high damage combos to finish off your opponent. Of course, not everything in Critical Strike is about high damage combos and movement. The fairy only has 70 health, which means that you have to play a very dangerous game of balancing your health for dashing in and damaging your opponent. Additionally, the fairy's moveset requires you to always be right where your opponent is about to be, that way you can land damage. In fact, landing damage is one of those things that makes fairies so frustrating, and is probably why it isn't used by many people. It might do a lot of damage, and it's got some cool abilities, but the fairy is actually a bit difficult to use. Similar to Sorcerer, you have to keep your opponent just the right amount of distance close to you so that damage actually registers, but you also have to keep your opponent far away enough so that they can't take advantage of fairy's cooldowns. Overall, the fairy is an excellent class that I highly recommend. If you would like to get better at it, there's a link in the description to my ultimate fairy guide. Anyways, we have now taken a look at what I think are the 5 most underrated classes in Critical Strike Roblox. To be honest, all of these classes are really powerful. Some of them, such as Scout and Mercenary, take a lot of practice to use properly. But when you learn them, you'll be clapping more people than a Disney laugh track. But yeah, that is all for today's video. Make sure to like and to subscribe. Don't forget to use code SHOWDUS at redragonshop.com. Have a great day. Bye bye.